Hey, and welcome to another edition of Sports Card Investing Targets, where we take a look at several players' sports cards and determine the investability of those cards based off of market movers data, which is provided by sportscardinvestor.com, where if you use the promo code GRINDERS, you can get 20% off your first payment on any subscription. If you could give us a like and a subscribe, we'll move on to looking at the cards. Today, I wanted to do something a little bit different and take a look at comparisons between a player's cards PSA 10 and BGS 9.5 grades, just to see the price discrepancies and illustrate the difference in the market between the prices of those two grades for the same card. A lot of times, a BGS 9.5 might score a PSA 10 if you had submitted it to PSA. So the two biggest grading companies out there are Beckett Grading Services, BGS, and Professional Sports Authenticator, PSA. And these two companies use different grading scales when it comes to how they evaluate a card and assign it a grade. They look at corners, edges, centering, and surface. And based on a score they give each of those elements, they assign a grade to a card. The best grade that you can get for a PSA card is a 10. And the best grade that you can get for BGS is also a 10, but it's a lot harder to get a 10 over on BGS than it is at PSA. And more frequently, if you have a card that's near perfection, you're going to get a 9.5 grade over at BGS. With BGS, it's a little bit different. They do sub-scores with their grading. So they have these four little scores. I don't know if you can see it in this image. They'll have a score for your centering, for your corners, for your surface, and for your edges. And each of those scores will show up on your little label that they give you when they send you the card back. If you have an autograph, that'll also receive a score. When Beckett does its grading, it doesn't do it in rounded numbers. They include decimos in some of their scores. So instead of getting a 9 or a 10 score, you might get a 9.5 score on some of the features of the card. So when they aggregate all the different scores of these features, your card could score a 9.5 or an 8.5 or 7.5 or whatever. Whereas with PSA, they do it on round numbers like a 9 or a 10 or an 8 or whatever the score happens to be. And the difference between a BGS 9.5 and a PSA 10 as far as pricing can be significant. So it would make sense, theoretically, if you were to buy a BGS 9.5 card and then resubmit it over to PSA to try and score a 10, which would potentially net you a significant amount of money if you're able to score that 10 and then flip the card. If you ended up with a PSA 9, it would make sense to submit that card over to BGS to try to get the 9.5, which would increase the value of your card over that PSA 9. So I wanted to take a look this week at several NBA players' cards, rookie cards, and compare their BGS 9.5 to their PSA 10 pricing. The first card that we're going to look at is Kawhi Leonard. And as you can see from this chart provided by sportscardinvestor.com, the price discrepancy between a PSA 10 and a BGS 9.5 for Kawhi's 2012 Prism Base basketball card is pretty significant. We're looking right now at the most recent sale of the PSA 10 is $1,482 versus the most recent sale of the BGS 9.5, which is $740. So theoretically, if you were able to take that BGS 9.5 and submit it to PSA for grading and score it a 10, then you could potentially double your money there, which is what makes this an interesting inefficiency in this sports card market, with these differences in grading and the significant difference in the pricing that you can get from these different grades. Now, there are a couple ways that you can go about it if you wanted to try to resubmit a card to PSA. You could crack the actual casing yourself of the BGS 9.5. There's videos on YouTube where you can look it up and see how you can go about doing that. Or you could submit the card in the BGS 9.5 case over to PSA, and they would take a look at it, determine if it's a PSA 10, and I believe you have the option of having them send it back to you as a BGS 9.5 if you don't score a 10. I think you'd probably have to request that, but I believe that they would do that for you. So the next player that I want to look at is Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard comes out of the 2012 draft class. His rookie cards are 2012. Kawhi Leonard's rookie cards are 2012 too, but that's due to a lockout that the NBA had in 2011, which delayed his card. With Damian Lillard, you can see quite a difference as well. You can see his most recent PSA 10 sale went for $449 versus his BGS most recent, which was for $230. So we're seeing about a 2-to-1 on these two players that we've looked at so far. So there seems to definitely be a potential to capitalize on these discrepancies. Next player we're going to look at is Anthony Davis. Davis was the #1 pick of the 2012 draft. Popular year for the players on the list today. We'll check out his most recent sales, and you can see his PSA 10 sold for $778 versus $449, and this again is for the base Prism card of 2012 for Anthony Davis. So not quite as wide a gap there, but it's still significant, a few $100s. And actually, that 778 seems pretty cheap for Anthony Davis, to be honest. But it is just the base card. It's not a Prism Silver. All right, Karl-Anthony Towns is next on our list. You're going to notice something a little bit different with Karl-Anthony Towns charts. You'll see that his PSA 10 only is a little bit higher than the BGS 9.5 for most recent sales. We're looking at 452 versus 390. I think in a situation like this, you want to buy the PSA 10 in anticipation of it catching up to the trend of these other cards and potentially having a nice rise in the near term. Next up, we're going to look at Zion Williamson. We've got to include Zion in all these list videos because his card's so hot right now. It's actually been a little bit of consolidation in his card recently. It's been pretty flat for the last probably about a month and a half, 2 months, and his most recent prices were $2,700 for the PSA 10 versus $1,558 for the BGS 9.5. And the Zion card is actually what got me thinking about this, because I was originally searching for a Zion PSA 10 Prism Silver several months ago, and it was just out of my price range. And then I started to read up on grading a little bit more and finding out that there was like this discrepancy between BGS and PSA grading, where you could submit a 9.5 BGS card and have a pretty decent shot at getting a PSA 10 on it, which would significantly increase the price. Like I said earlier, it's very difficult to get a BGS 10 on the grades. It's referred to as pristine. They have another one called Black Label, but those are the absolute best grades that you can get for cards. And if you score a BGS 10 on something, then your card is going to be worth significantly more than a PSA 10. But it's very difficult to score. It's almost, if you think that you're going to get a 10 on PSA, it's almost better just to go there. But if you submit it for a BGS score and you end up getting a 9.5, it's worth considering to resubmit it over to PSA just to get that 10 if you think the card is worthy of it. So there are other grading systems out there that you can look into as well. The two main ones are PSA and BGS. Those are the ones that I wanted to look at. They're the most popular, and they're the ones that you'll see on eBay most frequently. And like I said, if you have a belief that your BGS 9.5 is PSA 10 worthy, it could definitely be profitable to send that card in. Just make sure that the value you're getting when you resubmit a card is going to be worth more than the cost of resubmitting it. With these cards that are hundreds and thousands of dollars of difference, it definitely makes sense to take that risk. But if it's a difference between a $30 and a $50 card, then it's not really worth it. So make sure that your card is worth sending in before you go through this trouble. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Leave us a comment below. Let us know what your experience has been with grading. Have you ever tried submitting a BGS 9.5 to get that PSA 10, or if you've submitted a PSA 9 to get that BGS 9.5? Let us know below. Let us know other grading companies that you've gone to and experiences that you've had. Make sure to check out Sports Card Grinders on Thursday. We're going to have Jeff Wilson from sportscardinvestor.com over on the show this week. Don't forget to sign up for Market Movers over at sportscardinvestor.com. You're going to get 20% off your first payment on any subscription if you use the promo code Grinders. And give us a like, give us a subscribe, and check out our RotoGrinders page on the sports cards section, where you can see plenty of articles and videos that we're posting weekly. Take care and good luck.